Paul made an attempt to carry on as if Brian hadn't died, you know. I think Paul had an impression. We should be thankful for what he did, you know, for keeping the Beatles going.
It was sad, you know, it was very sad to lose an old mate under those circumstances. But I don't think the major worry was, oh, what are we going to do now? We haven't got a manager. We were kind of managing ourselves, really.
It was a huge void. We didn't know anything about, you know, our personal business and finances, and, you know, he'd just taken care of everything. And I suppose it was chaos after that.
We're suddenly like chickens without heads. What are we going to do? What are we going to do?
The world was a problem, but we weren't. You know, that was the best thing about the Beatles. Until we started to break up to like White Album and stuff, then even the studio got a bit tense then.
It was evident on the White Album, you know. I think it was evident in India when George and I stayed there and Paul and Ringo left, and it was a slow death.
We'd been into drugs, and we were. The next step then is you've got to try and find a meaning then.
I met David Wynne, who showed me this picture, and he said, oh, he's coming to do a lecture at the Hilton. It's called Maharishi. So I said, okay, I'll go. I got some tickets, and then I thought, well, I'll get some in case the others want to go. And after the lecture, we went because, you know, that was one of the privileges of the Beatles, you could get in anywhere. So we got backstage, met Maharishi, and he said, well, we're going to Bangor tomorrow, you should come and get initiated.
We went along, and I thought he made a lot of sense, you know. I think we all did, because he basically said that with a simple system of meditation, 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening, no big sort of crazy thing, you can improve the quality of life and sort of find some sort of meaning.
Maureen was in hospital having Jason. I was visiting, and I came home, and I put on the answer phone. And as a message from John, oh man, we've seen this guy and we're all going to Wales, you've got to come. And the next message was George saying, wow, man, we've seen this guy, Maharishi's great, we're all going to Wales on Saturday. You've got to come.
We'd sort of rung our mates, hey, we're going up there, he's great, this guy, oh, you ought to come and see him, you know, it's like a good book you'd read. You try, hey, you ought to get it, I'll send you a copy. Sort of that kind of thing, you know, you ought to come, or he's going to be there, come with us. And we got up there, there was a big crowd at the train station, there was a crowd to meet us, and we all sort of wandered through in our psychedelic gear, and spent it was like a summer camp.
We were in Wales with Maharishi. We'd just gone down after seeing his lecture the first night, and we went down to Wales, and we heard it then, you know? And then we went right off into the Maharishi thing. In Wales, a place called Bangor in Wales, somebody came up to us, and press were there, because we'd gone down with this strange Indian, you know, and they said, Brian's dead. I was stunned, you know, and we all were, I suppose. And Maharishi, we went into, well, what, you know, he's dead and all that, and he was sort of saying, oh, forget it, you know, be happy, fucking idiot, you know, like parents, you know, smile. That's what Maharishi said, and we did, and we were along with the Maharishi trip.
That was kind of stunning, because we were off on this sort of finding the meaning of life, and there he was, dead.
And it was just, you know, blood drained from the face, you know, saying Brian's dead. And there was very little we knew other than that he'd been found dead. And we just knew, well, that's it, it was very strange for it to happen at that precise moment. We just got involved with this meditation.
Far from the noise and pace of city life, in the cool, clear air of Rishikesh, North India, Pathy News reports from the meditation retreat of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the man who, through transcendental meditation, is currently bringing peace of mind to the Beatles.
Rishikesh is an incredible place. It's like 99% of the population of Rishikesh are all renunciates. And It's right in the foothills of the Himalayas. It's where the Ganges flows out of the Himalayas into the plains of Kurukshetra. It's called the plains between Delhi and the Himalayas.
I mean, we were really away from everything. It was like a sort of recluse holiday camp, you know, right at the foot of the Himalayas. It was like being up a mountain, but they call it the foothills, hanging over the Ganges.
We were meditating a lot, we were having seminars by Maharishi. It was pretty far out.
You would get up in the morning, you would go down to a little communal breakfast. Food was veggie, which is kind of good for me now, but thinking back on it, I was still meat eating then, so it was all right though. It was sort of curries and stuff, you know.
The food was impossible for me because, you know, I'm allergic to so many different things. I took 2 suitcases with me, one of clothes and one of Heinz beans. There's a plug for you.
When we sat in the mountains eating lousy vegetarian food and writing all those songs, you know, wrote tons of songs in India. We were there 4 months, or George and I were.
No,
we lost 13 pounds and we looked a day older.
Did you think this man's on the level?
I don't know what level he's on, but
He's on the
we
level.
had a nice holiday in India and came back rested to play businessman.
What do you see in the years ahead?
It's just trying to mix business with enjoyment.
Pleasure.
Because we're in business, you know, we find ourselves in business.
Are you the
We're trying to
directors?
make it-
Are you the directors
Yeah.
of this?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
like all the profits won't go into our pockets. They'll go to help people, but not like a charity.
You know, I mean, it had a lot of ideas of we could do this and we could do that, but when it came down to it, really, the only thing we could do was write songs and make records and be Beatles successfully.
That's a track which it just sort of, you know, came. Chuck Berry once did a song called Back in the USA, which is very American, very Chuck Berry, very sort of, you know, he was serving in the army, and when I get back home, I'm going to kiss the ground. And, you know, I just can't wait to get back to the States. And it's a very American sort of thing, I've always thought. That kind of. So this one is like about, in my mind, it's just about a spy sort of who's been in America a long, long time. You know, some fella who's been in America a long time, and he's picked up and he's very American, but he gets back to USSR, you know, where, and he's sort of saying, you know, leave it till tomorrow, honey, to disconnect, you know, to disconnect the phone and all that, and come here, honey, and with Russian women and that. You see, what it is, it concerns the attributes of Russian women, soul element created by George's guitar and heavy brass.
Suddenly one day, I think Neil or somebody said, oh, Ringo's gone on holiday.
I felt 2 things. I felt I wasn't playing great, and the other 3 were really happy, and I was an outsider. You know, I came to this decision, fuck it, I'm leaving.
We needed a jet noise, for instance, so we'd go and raid the sound effects library as we'd been used to doing on Sgt. Pepper. But actually, we couldn't find one landing. But I used to do an impression of one. Still do. You want to hear it?
Yes.
Jet landing?
Jet landing.
Jet taking off? Goes the other way.
Talent.
Is that a jet landing or what, man?
Dear Prudence certainly got written there. Mia Farrow's sister was, well, she sort of hibernated, meditated and hibernated. We saw her, I think, twice in the 2 weeks I was there. Everyone would be banging on the door, you're still alive.
So we had to kind of reassure him that we did think he was great. I mean, you know, that's what it's like in life. You go through life, you never stop and say, hey, you know what, I think you were great. Well, I don't think we'd ever done any of that with Ringo. It'd always just been, yeah, he's great, he's good. And he felt insecure, so we had to, and he left. So we had to kind of go and sort of say, no, you're great, you're the best.
You know, and I knew we were just in a messed up stage, all of us. Then, you know, it wasn't just me, it was the whole thing was going down. And I came back and went in the studio, and George had it decked out with flowers. It's just flowers everywhere, and John had sent me telegrams saying, you're the best rock drummer, come on home. And And I just felt good about myself again, and we'd got through that little crisis, and it was great.
That's me just doing a throwaway song, a la Walrus, a la everything I've ever written.
Which you...
I'm throwing the line in, the Walrus was Paul, just to confuse everybody a bit more, and because I felt slightly guilty, because I'd got Yoko and he got nothing, and I was going to quit.
Right.
And so I thought, Walrus has now become meaning I am the one.
Right.
And he didn't mean that in the song originally, he just meant it could have been I'm the fox terrier, it's just a bit of poetry. So it was just thrown in like that.
We used to go to the clubs late at night, drink, dance, maybe a little food. And there was a friend of mine who I befriended in the clubs. He was an African guy. He was called Jimmy Scott. And, we would jive together, just, hey, man, what's going on? And he would say, obladi, oblada, life goes on, brah. Yeah, man, and I just loved this. And I would go, obladi, Jimmy, And he had a few other sayings. Nothing's too much, just out of sight.
Right.
So I loved all these little sayings. And one thing I always love about the intro there, that what happened was me, George, and Ringo were kind of slaving over this. And John wasn't there yet. John, he was late. So we're not getting anywhere with it. Chinga, 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 chinga. It was thinking, oh God, it's not happening. And John comes in to the studio. He says, what are you doing? I say, obladi. He goes, oh, that one. He goes over to the piano. He goes, all right, what key? And A. He goes, dun, 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 dun. And we all fall in behind him and go, yes. We didn't welcome Yoko in the studio because we thought it was a guy thing. Even the guys' wives and the girlfriends and stuff weren't really welcome in the studio. They could, control room for a quick visit, but actually sit in the studio with us. It was like, no, excuse me, we're working. The thing is, it was really just the initial shock of Yoko sitting on one of the amps. It was mind-blowing. But later on, we suddenly sort of thought, you know what? John's in love with this girl. If he wants to bring her in the studio, we've got to cope with that. And we learned to cope with it. And, I now feel that he had the right to do that. It might have been better if he'd been a little bit more diplomatic and sort of says, hey, guys, I'd love her to be, I really love her and I just want to be near her all the time. But we had to figure that out. And we did eventually, but it took some time. And there was a few looks went on.
Everybody seemed to be paranoid except for us two who were in the glow of love. Everything's clear and open when you're in love, and everybody sort of was tense around us, and what is she doing here at the session, or why is she with him, and all this sort of madness is going on around us because we just happen to want to be together all the time.
With When My Guitar Gently Weeps, I think was typical of that. I just opened a book that was around. I just opened it, and the first thing I looked at became the song, and it was something about Gently Weeps. And then from that, the whole thought started going, and I just wrote the song then, just closed the book again, and I had the idea. I think, Eric Clapton played guitar on that. I think some people wrote letters to me saying, you've got a really good blues feel where you play that guitar. And we didn't publicise it, but we didn't keep it secret. No. Eric's sort of a good friend of mine, and I really dig him as a guitarist and as a guy.
It was crap, we were trying to do the song and it wasn't happening, they weren't taking it serious, and I don't think they were even all playing on it. And so I went home that night and I just thought, well, that's a shame because I know this song's pretty good. And then the next day I was driving into London with Eric, and I said, hey, what are you doing? Why don't you come to the studio and play on this song for me? And he says, oh no, I can't do that. Nobody's ever played on a Beatles record, and the others wouldn't like that. And I said, well, odd luck, it's my song and I'd like you to play on it.
It'd been a few years since I'd seen them, and they had changed. And this particular song was a strong view of, and it was coming very much from where George had found himself as a result of becoming involved with mysticism and seeing John and George and Paul sing together when they were doing harmonies and things, and Paul playing. I mean, it was fantastic.
I mean, you think about it, it's very generous of George to give Eric this moment when he could have had it for himself. But it's just like, George was very like that. He was very open.
The idea of the happiness is a warm gun thing is from an advert in an American paper where it said, you know, happiness is a warm gun sort of thing, and it was sort of get ready for the long hot summer with a rifle, you know, come and buy them now. It was an advert in a gun magazine, you know, and it was so sick, you know, the idea of come and buy your killing weapons and come and get it. And it was just such a great line, that happiness is a warm gun, that John sort of took that and uses that as a chorus. Yeah. And the rest of the words, I think they're great words. You know. It's a poem. It's a poem, and it finishes off, happiness is a warm gun. Yes, it is.
Happiness is a Warm Gun, as I said many, many times, was from the cover of a gun magazine which George Martin had in the studio when we were making a double album. And it had Happiness is a Warm Gun on the cover, and on the cover it had a picture of a gun that had just been shot, was smoking, you know. Yeah. And I thought, how incredible the fact that happiness is a warm gun that's just shot something or somebody. And that's why I wrote the song. The first half, let's go, she's not a girl who misses much, was something I was writing vaguely connected with Yoko. It was just when I was first meeting her. And these are all different segments of songs, and I just wove them all together, different songs. Stuck them all in one piece and made like a little miniature collage, yeah. You know, like instead of an album collage like Pepper, this was all done in the one song. And it went through the different styles of rock, and it also was about a gun, not about heroin or anything. And those days I had no idea about heroin. I'd never seen it, I knew anybody that had ever touched it or taken it.
You see, I just start singing some words with a tune, and it just, you know what I mean? I don't ever write a song thinking, now I'll write a song about. I do sometimes, but mainly I don't. And mainly I'm doing a tune, and then some words come into my head, you know. And these happen to be mark of my day, you know. Although I spend days in conversation. It doesn't mean anything, you know. But those just happen to come into my head. So that's what this song's about. So it is about my dog. But I don't particularly want her to remember me. Like, the song is about Martha. I don't mean it. But like, you make up songs, you know, you don't make up songs trying to make a serious. I don't ever try to make any sort of serious songs like that. I just make it because I've got to have words to use it, you know. So I make up any kind of. So, you know, you can read anything you like into it, but really, you know, it's just as a song. It's me singing to my dog.
Well, over what period, how long a time has it taken you all to get this whole LP together? I mean, write the songs?
Quite a few of our albums, like the Beatles double album, George Martin didn't really produce it, you know. I don't know whether this is slanderous, but he didn't, you know. And, you know, in the early days, I can remember what George Martin did, you know. What did he do? He would translate. Well, I always think, well, he did it. If Paul wanted to use violins and that, he would translate it for him. Like in My Life, there's an Elizabethan piano solo in it. So he would do things like that. He'd say, play like Bach or something. Could you put 12 bars in there? And he helped us develop a language a little, you know, to talk to musicians. But I was never, because I'm very shy, and many reasons, I didn't very much go for musicians, you know. I didn't like to have to go and see 20 guys sitting there and try and tell them what to do, because they were always so lousy anyway, you know. Apart from the early days, I didn't have much to do with it, you know. I did it myself, you know.
I was sitting around with my acoustic guitar, and I'd heard about the civil rights troubles that were happening in the 60s in Alabama, Mississippi, Little Rock in particular. So that was in my mind, and I just thought it'd be really good if I could write something that if it ever reached any of the people going through those problems, it might kind of give them a little bit of hope. So I wrote Blackbird. And in England, Bird is a girl. So I was thinking of a black girl going through this, now's your time to arise, set yourself free and take these broken wings. And then I talk about broken wings. So I use metaphors so that on the one hand, if you're a little kid, a lot of little kids say to me that Blackbird's their favorite song. So if you're a little kid, they don't know about the civil rights. They're seeing a blackbird and the freedom, and they're feeling the idea of just escaping barriers and stuff, and they just like it as a little song. But so for me, that's what nearly always happens is like in Let It Be, I'll talk about, darkness and times of trouble and stuff, but I'm not often specific because it's just not my way. And I'm much more comfortable talking about it, but veiling it somehow.
A lot of the recordings where they would have a basic idea and then they would have a jam session to end it, which sometimes didn't sound too good.
Everybody can write songs if they want to, if they have a desire to, and if they have sort of some musical knowledge and background. And then it's by writing them, the same as writing books or writing articles or painting. The more you do it, the better, or the more you can understand how to do it. And I used to just write songs. I still do. I just write a song and it just comes out however it wants to. And some of them are catchy songs. To me, there's just songs and I just write them, and some will be considered as good by maybe the masses and some won't. But to me, they're just songs, things that are there that have to be got out.
Rocky Raccoon. I was sitting on the roof in India, just sort of with guitar. John and I were sitting around just playing guitar, and we were with Donovan, and we were just sitting around enjoying ourselves. And I started playing the chords of Rocky Raccoon, just messing around. And originally it was Rocky Sassoon. And then we started making up the words, the three of us, and started just to write them down. They came very quickly, and eventually I changed it from Sassoon to Raccoon because it sounded more like a cowie. So there it is. It's just, these kind of things, you can't really talk about how they come because they just come into your head, they really do. And it's like John writing his books, there's no, I don't know how he does it, and he doesn't know how he does it, but he just writes. It's like any writer, I think people who actually do create and write, you tend to read in and think, oh, well, now, how did he do that? But it actually does flow, just flows into their head, into their hand, and they write it down, And that's what happened with this. I don't know anything about the Appalachian Mountains or cowboys and Indians or anything, but I just made it up, And the doctor came in stinking of gin and proceeded to lie on the table. So there you are.
It used to be just hard, to bring your songs in when you had Lennon and McCartney. And it used to be a bit of a joke, really, because I would bring these songs I'd written in, and they'd all be rolling on the floor laughing because, I'd rewritten an old standard again. I was great at rewriting Jerry Lee Lewis songs.
So we've always played a lot of kinds of things, So I don't know if it's getting off the subject, but that's why there's a great variety in this LP. Because in our things, in everything we do, we just haven't got one bag, the Beatles, I mean, because on one hand you'll get something like I Will, and then you'll get Why Don't We Do It in the Road, Just completely different things, completely different feelings, but it's me singing both of them. It's the same fella, and I wrote both of them. So that you can't explain it. I don't know why I do Why Don't We Do It in the Road, shouting it like that, with a piano and just a rock and roll thing, and then do this sort of smoochy Latin American girl from Ipanema.
he initiated the move to start going and seeing his mum, basically from school, because what we used to do, we used to play truant from school, and this was like a safe house to go to, you know. I mean, John used to go down there at first, and I'd say, where have you been to? You know, he'd say, I've just been down to my mum's, you've got to come down, right? So one day he took me down to meet her. You could see directly where John got his humour and his love of life from. She was always saying to us, look, don't worry about it, you know, it'll be okay, don't worry about tomorrow, just have a good time today, that's all that matters. It was her attitude about life, her philosophy about life, her fun and her love of laughing. I mean, she used to wear these spectacles with no glasses in, you know, and like people would come to the door to collect bills, like the bread man or something, and she'd just talk to them and stick her finger through the frame and start rubbing her eye, and it just used to, people just look at her, they couldn't believe it, you know. She was just crazy. It was a relationship that was very close because it had been developed not from a childhood thing, but from a different level. And he was incredibly fond of his mother, very, very close to her.
So this song was just made up in an evening. You know, we hadn't ever thought of it before then, and it's one of my favourites. You know, because of that, I think it works. You know, because it's a good one to dance to, like a big long drum break. But just because instead of, well, normally we might have sort of 4 bars of drums, but with this we just said, no, keep it going. You know, let's keep it. I like, you know, we all like to hear just drums plodding on. So no more explanation. It's called Birthday.
Left the studio and went to a little room, so there's no separation, and there was lots of group activity going down. I loved the White Album.
It's the same thing again. You know, we wrote them with guitars, and John, on a lot of his, John picks the guitar because he learned off Donovan when we were in India. Donovan showed him how to finger pick. So he sort of stuck in everything then. And while he was learning finger picking, I was sort of playing acoustic as well, you know, acoustic guitar. So that's it. That's why they crept in like this. We decided not to try and cover them up with it like we might do normally, and just use the acoustic guitar instead of, say, a piano or an electric guitar or anything. So the only thing about this one, however, it says, born a poor young country boy. And I was born in Walton Hospital, actually, so it's a dirty lie.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that was actually stuff that Maharishi had said, like that song, Come On, you know, come on, it's such a joy, whatever that song. Everybody got something to hide except for me and my monkey. Well, apart from the bit about the monkey, that was just what Maharishi used to always say, you know.
Yeah. Hello, Paul.
And I was saying, why were you so keen, like, to get up with Maharishi? He said, tell you the truth. He said, I thought you might slip me the answer. It's very John.
Would the Beatles go out with the yogi as an act?
Well, we found out that we made a mistake there. So we liked in meditation, but not the Maharishi on his scene. But that's a personal mistake we made in public, so.
I had this song called Helter Skelter, which is just a ridiculous song. So we did it like that because I like noise.
I heard it on the car radio the other day. I did think, wow, you know, it is. I could see why people would think it was the precursor of heavy metal. How it came about was I had read in a music paper that The Who had done a really heavy track, and Pete Townsend of The Who was quoted saying, we've just made the dirtiest, loudest, filthiest song ever. So I was kind of jealous. I didn't hear their song. I still don't know what song he was referring to. But I went in the studio and said, guys, we've got to do a song that's dirtier and filthier and louder than The Who. The thing about the Beatles stuff was that when I look back on what we produced, there's no 2 songs that are alike. Whereas, you know, a lot of record artists will find a great formula and the next 3 singles are kind of the same song, you know. But we were young guys, and we would have got bored doing that. And the worst thing ever, seeing as we're allowed in the studio, allowed to play guitars and things, the worst thing ever would have been just to sit around bored. So we always changed whatever we were about to do and did something different. So I had this Helter Skelter thing, and we did that, and yeah, it is pretty raw, it's pretty screamy, but it was good to do. We did a lot of takes on it, so it was hard on Ringo. I like, loud rock and roll, basically. And I know the AC/DC guys, and they're loud. Have you seen them live? Oh, baby. That's one of the joys being in a band, is you get to plug in an electric guitar and turn it up just as loud as you want. And it's such a sort of cool feeling that I could see why you'd form a group based around that idea.
John gave me a handy tip once, which is once you start to write a song, try and finish it straight away while you're in the mood. And I've learned from experience, because you go back to it and then you're in a whole different state of mind and it's more difficult. Sometimes it's easier, but on the whole it's more difficult to come back to something. So I do now try and finish them straight away.
It was recorded twice because then the Beatles were getting really tense with each other, and I did the slow version, and I wanted it out as a single, as a statement of the Beatles' position on Vietnam and the Beatles' position on Revolution. And Revolution, the first take, the George and Paul were resentful and said it's not fast enough. Now, if you go into the details of what's a hit record and what isn't, and I wanted to say the Beatles to say something about Revolution, and the lyrics stand today.
My dad's always sort of played fruity old songs like that, and I like them. I like the melody of old songs, and the lyrics as well. There's some old lyrics like sort of a woman singing about a man, and she's saying something about I want to have his initial on my monogram. So you know what I mean? Yeah. Just good lyrics and just good thoughts that you don't sort of hear so much these days, And so I would quite like to have been sort of a 1920s writer, because I like that thing, the top hat and tails and sort of coming onto this kind of number. I like that thing. But so this is just me doing it and pretending I'm living in 1925.
All I'm doing, I'm acting out the part of Beatle George, and, we're all acting out our own parts. And, the world is a stage and the people are the players.
We'd all learn to grow together, and, some days one would grow a little taller, and the next day someone else would grow taller. You know what I mean? It's how we were.
In the old days, I used to think of songwriting was this, and I love you and you love me, and my writing was something else, even if I didn't think of it quite like that. But then I just realised through Dylan and other people, Bob Dylan, not Thomas, that it is the same thing. That's what I didn't realise, being so naive, that you don't write pop songs and then you do that and then you do that. That everything you do is the same thing, so do it the same way. But sometimes I'll write lyrics to a song first, and then I'll get the same feeling as Khaki Hargreaves or a poem, and then write the music to it after. So then it's a poem sung. But some of the time, sometimes the tune comes, and then you just put suitable words to fit the tune. If the tune's doodle-doodle-doodle, and you have shagaboo-doo-cha, you have sound words then, just the sound of it. Because it is all sound, everything's vibrations, I believe.
Because in a way, Revolution number 9 was all right, but it wasn't particularly like Beatle.
A lot of people put the album down purely because of that track.
Yeah, but then again, it has good points, because Revolution number 9 worked very well in the context of all those different songs. I mean, that was the great thing about it, that if people spent enough time listening to it, then there was all different types of music and types of songs, and there was nothing really shocking about it.
How much of Revolution Number 9 from the White Album was accidental?
Well, it's like an action painting. You don't. Revolution Number 9 is the weird one, right? I had a lot of loops, tape loops, which is just a circle of tape. If people don't understand it, it repeats itself over and over. Had about 10 of them on different mono machines, all spinning at once with pencils and things holding them. I had a basic track, which was the end of the Revolution song, where we'd gone on and on and on and on. And I just played it sort of live into another tape and just brought them in on faders like you do as a DJ, and brought them in like that. And it was accidental in that way. I think I did it twice maybe. And the second one was the take. And the number nine was an engineer's voice. You know, they have test tapes to see that the tapes are all right. And the voice was saying, this is number 9 megacycles. So he was talking like that. And I just liked the way he said number 9. So I just made a loop of him saying number 9 and brought that in whenever I felt like it. And 9th of October, I'll be 105, and 9 seems to be my number. And it's the highest number in the universe. After that, you go back to 1.
Number 9, number 9, number 9, number 9.
John wrote it mainly. It's his tune, you know, which is surprising for John because he doesn't normally write this kind of tune. It's a very sweet tune, and Ringo sings it great, I think. The arrangement was done by George Martin because he's very good at that kind of arrangement, you know, very sort of lush, sweet arrangement. And that's all I can say about it. It's very sweet, and in fact, it's good night.
I think it was an album which could have been made a fantastically good album if it had been compressed a bit and condensed. But a lot of people I know think it's still the best album they made. So it's not my view, but horses for courses.
The songs, I think, perhaps a surprise to some people, because I think a lot of people expected another step from Sgt. Pepper.
Well, it is another step, you know, but it's not necessarily in the way people expected. On Sgt. Pepper, we had more instrumentation than we never had, more orchestral stuff than we'd ever used before. So it was more of a production. But we didn't really want to go overboard on that this time. And we've tried to play more like a band this time, only using instruments when we have to, instead of just using them for the fun of it.
Is this for any sort of concept of being able to do the things live?
Yeah. And also for the concept that we like playing together. That's the main concept.
Well, I think in a way it was a mistake doing 4 sides, because first of all, it's too big for people to really get into it, for reviewers and also the public. Maybe now people have bought it, and if they've really listened to it for years or since it was out, then they'll have their own favourites. And there's a couple of things that we could have done without on the album, and maybe if we'd have made it just compact, 14 songs, say.
Paul McCartney rang me up. I'd never met him. Well, maybe I'd met him at some parties, but I was very surprised to get a telephone call from this celebrity. It was like getting a telephone call from George Bush or someone. And he asked me if I'd do this record sleeve and come and talk about it. I said that I didn't think I could do that sort of thing. I'd never done it, and I wasn't sure that it was something I wanted to do. But he said, come along and talk about it. And I was very reluctant, really, to get involved. And so, almost as a way of putting him off, I said we could... all these record sleeves have got too much going on, too much going on. And maybe I was thinking of Sgt. Pepper, particularly, which is absolutely filled with stuff. But as a general tendency, they're a little overactive, I think. I think Sgt. Pepper took it to a zenith, which was marvellous. But I said, Why don't you just put it in white cover? leave the pictures out.
I had a great fun week with Richard. I managed to persuade the other guys in the group that this Robert Fraser knew this guy called Richard Hamilton, who was real good and was no slouch, and it might be very exciting to try and work on our next cover with him. So everyone agreed, and I went to his place in Highgate, I think it was. Every day I just drove out there each day. And it was very exciting for me because I like art and I don't get a lot of chance to be involved in it on a day-to-day level. Didn't then, anyway. So I would just go out there, and Richard started by asking me, we were going to do a poster and then design the jacket of the whole thing. But his first thought was a poster. So he asked me to ask the guys in the group if they had any old photographs from when they were children. And just photographs that hadn't been seen. So we all contributed a collection of baby photographs, childhood photographs, silly photographs when you're knocking around Paris and hitchhiking, and like John and I had done. He then arranged them through the week, chucked out things he wasn't interested in, and finally then he put up an easel and he started to paste his real favourites into favourite configurations on this easel. And it was smashing, just watching and chatting and helping with the coffee and just really watching him get on with it and just being his companion really for the week. And if he needed to know anything, I could just help him. So it was a great experience, just sitting and watching like a voyeur. It was great. And then, I say, he eventually got it all on the easel and got what I thought was a really good collage going. And then he did, the biggest turn on of the week for me was, then he took white paper and started to paste onto this, what I thought was a finished collage, white areas, which was the first time I'd ever seen negative space used or even heard about the whole idea, because, you know, it was just a new concept to me. And he was saying, well, you'll be able to look through the poster with these bits of white. There'll be a relief from all this black and grey and all these tones. You'll have these pure little white areas. And they were only little areas. You can hardly notice them unless I tell you about them. But if you take out that poster and take a look at it, they're very strong areas. And it was a big turn on to me. I thought, wow, that's the single greatest thing he's done all week. And then I don't know whether it was because of that, but he then moved on to the idea that the cover should be white. And I was saying, wow, you know, I don't know how they're going to think of that, but it's certainly never been done before, by us anyway.
You know, this was fairly small criticism. When they did the White Album, I thought we should have made probably a very, very good single album out of it, rather than making a double album.
Well, no, I agree. We should have put it out as two separate albums, the White and the Whiter album. A lot of information on a double album.
But you know, what do you do when you've got all them songs and you want to get rid of them so you can do more songs? You know, there was a lot of, ego in that band, and there was a lot of songs that should have just maybe been elbowed or made into B-sides.
After Blind Eye, we made the double album. It's like if you took each track off, like I told you many times, you know, just me and a backing group, Paul and a backing group. And I enjoyed it, you know, but we broke up then, you know.
Well, you can always say that, you know, as I say, perhaps I'll go with, not definitely. I mean, in fact, I think it's a fine little album, and I think the fact that it's got so much on it is one of the things that's cool about it. Because they're very varied stuff, you know, Rocky Raccoon Piggies, Happiness of Warm Guns, that kind of stuff, you know. I think it's a fine album. You know, I'm not a great one for that, you know, maybe it was too many of that. Look, what do you mean? It was great, it's sold, it's the bloody Beatles White Album, shut up.
Well, you know, gentlemen, I mean, it verges from the sublime to the ridiculous.
Hello, Paul.
I don't like Mom. Lady MacDonald.